Kanye, there was Kanye coin.
Right.
There was Bill Murray coin. And because I think this was 2013 or 2014, when shitcoins were a real novelty, and the danger of them was not as obvious as it started to become. And what started to become more obvious as you went into the 2016 period, 2017 period, and what were called the ICOs, the initial coin offerings. And so as a stockbroker, former stockbroker myself, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. These are actual securities. When you do a pre-sale of an ICO, and then with the expectation of people then having an additional subsequent sale and profiting from that sale, you have expectation of profiting from the issuance of what isn't therefore an unregistered security. And having worked on Wall Street and under the legal auspices of the SEC for many years, and having a broker's license and studying, the Securities Act of 33 and 34, and looking at case studies of what happens to people who go against the SEC. The SEC never loses. They have all the time in the world. They have all the money in the world. And anyway, so this is when I started to sound the alarm on shitcoins and became more of a maximalist, because it's like, okay, it was registered securities, and it's illegal to promote unregistered securities. It's illegal to sell unregistered securities, but it's equally illegal to promote unregistered securities. So what the BitBoy is doing is illegal under the SEC. That's why I believe he's got a lawsuit hanging over his head from some regulator, because he's engaging in illegal activities. And he has something, he says, an astronomical monthly legal bill, which isn't going to get any better. And this is really the lesson that people learn over and over and over again. There's no the wisdom is never passed on from one group to the next. Every single new group that comes along has to learn the exact same lessons all over again. All the way going back to Charles Ponzi to the present day, every 5 or 6 years, there's a new group of suckers that get mowed down by the pros in some speculative market. And you see it in the stock market, of course, over and over again. You see the penny stock market. You see in the Canadian mining, Canadian miners, gold and silver miners, are notorious for starting companies based on two guys standing around a hole in the ground saying they just discovered 1 million ounces of silver, and then they go public and they cash out, and then they're gone and you never hear from them again. That goes on over and over and over again. So it's exactly the same thing with shitcoins. It's just like this is what we do at the Bitcoin office, is to stop big shitcoiners from coming into El Salvador, because what they do is they have $1 billion. Or like EOS. EOS was one that's pre-sold, excuse me, in the billions, and then they skipped town, and it was just a total fraud. And but there's a guy named Dan Larimer. So, give you a little history of the shitcoin business. He's launched, I think, no less than 3. He's like the master of the shitcoinery, going back really 10, 11 years. Mm-hmm. He's one of the kings of shitcoinery. He's played it smart though, because no one really knows his name that much, but he's done several big time pump and dumps shitcoin. But anyway, so with El Salvador, because it's so famous now as Bitcoin country, people also engage in what's called orange washing. So you go to a site that'll say, we love Bitcoin, we're Bitcoiners. And then you go to their site, you start following them, and then it turns out it's an ad for shitcoin. So it's just like ExxonMobil. They like to have an ad showing how lush and green the forest is and how green they are. They take everything from Greenpeace and they cut and paste it against their advertisement, and it's like, we love birds, we love animals, and they're like making out with a hamster or something.
Yeah, they're making out with a hamster.
And then at the end it's like ExxonMobil. Yes. It's like, oh, I didn't know ExxonMobil.
And it's that same shot of the windmill, the wind turbines, and then some solar farm.
Yeah.
And they go, we're spending, and sometimes they'll even say the dollar amount out loud, which is always funny. Like, we're spending over 10 million a year. I'm like, this is a $200 billion company.
Yeah.
That's like saying we're spending 53 cents a year on green energy.
It's like, you look in a vending machine, and it's heading lower. So, I mean, this is a point that is part of his mission to make El Salvador safe, to bring human rights to El Salvador. The Salvadorans are enjoying their country for the first time ever in 200 years. So this is analogous to that. So we literally count the days that we are keeping El Salvador shitcoin free. And so since the Decree 49, which was a decree that was published that created the Bitcoin office. We've gone now 400 and whatever days without any shitcoins terrorizing the local Salvadorans and exposing them to all the problems and scams of shitcoin. And I mentioned some of them, that we've been repelled. One of the ADA is Cardano. Okay, so Cardano was, unceremoniously tossed out of the country at one point because the shitcoining is effectively illegal. The way it works is that Bitcoin is money and everything else is an unregistered security. So if you're not willing to register with the commission to register whatever it is you're doing as a security, then you can't trade it, right? It can't be traded on any exchange because then it's an unregistered security. And even though even that process, losing their life instantaneously, but in the other example, somebody who's exposed to shitcoinery, they are losing their livelihood and their soul over, let's say, 5 to 10 years. But at the end of that period, you're still with a shell of a person, a dead person. So they are equal in my view. And I don't see how anybody can argue that point, really, considering the sense of bringing in this methodology. Every economic metric across the board in El Salvador has done nothing but skyrocket and go straight the fuck up. So if you're arguing with this point, I mean, you're arguing for terrorism and for economic stagnation. So I would posit that you're a fucking moron. The result is 86%, 90% of votes in the biggest landslide in history. Okay, look at that number. Where did that number come from? Where is this growth coming from? Where is all the good vibes coming from? Why are all these people moving here? Why is the tourism up 100 whatever percent and growing like a weed? Why are we building all these hotels? So the proof is in the numbers. So now that the numbers are out and the numbers are published, and it's clear that, during that year of the bear market, when they had scams like Cell or Luna or any of these other scams, none of them touched El Salvador. El Salvador remained completely outside of all of these scams because they actively pursued an agenda to keep them out. We have a lot of high-level famous people who wanted to come here, but they were associated with scam coins, so we said, no, stay away, fuck you.
Someone in the chat brought up Tether, and they're like, isn't Tether an altcoin, or isn't Tether a shit coin, and why is Max pushing Tether or whatever? So explain that. Right, Tether is a virtual dollar, right? It doesn't compete with Bitcoin. It's not a Bitcoin competitor to Bitcoin. It's essentially a competitor to the dollar, the US dollar. It's a digital, Jeremy Allaire, I think, who runs it. He spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on lobbyists in Washington, D.C. to protect him and his crooked empire of a stable coin called Circle, which is a piece of shit, which will eventually be bought by BlackRock. That's the only exit strategy for Circle, because they lose money on every trade. They can't make any money at Circle because they pay out more than they can possibly earn on having the reserves on deposit. So they're buying customers. They lose, the old joke is, we lose money on every pair of shoes we sell, but we're going to make it up on volume. Right? That's Circle. They lose money on every trade they do, but they think they're going to make it up on volume, right? This guy, Jeremy Allaire, is like a complete dum-dum. So how do these guys get these jobs? This is the thing that's mind-boggling to me. I see these people come to these big positions of power with these big